Beneath Paris lies a city of bones. Forgotten lives and desperate souls line the walls in an eerie decoration. Are the catacombs merely a storage for bones, or is there more to them? Let's find out in today's episode of The Inexplicable. Hello and welcome back to The Inexplicable podcast, the only place in the known universe where leaving with more questions than answers means you're heading in the right direction. Today I'm going to be looking at the Parisian Catacombs. I first heard about this when I watched an episode of Sam and Colby, I think. They went to explore this. If any of you have watched Sam and Cody, they're the ghost explorers and they go check out like haunted places or abandoned buildings, and they went to the Paris Catacombs. Now, it was a very fun episode I watched, and that kind of sparked my interest in it. And then I heard them talk about it on a different podcast. So I thought, you know what, I think this warrants me taking a look at it. So I did a little deep dive on it, and today I'm going to go through everything that I found, give you an idea of the structure of it and the sheer size of it, and also a bit about its origin and kind of some of the lore and the stories around it. So, without further ado, this is the deadly Parisian Catacombs. So I think a nice place to begin would be the origins of the catacombs. Now, if you want to look at how it got started, we can look back to as early as the Roman period, where there were these ancient limestone quarries that lay just beneath Paris, and they began to be excavated. And they were being excavated to use the limestone to supply stone. The limestone was being used for building supplies to help grow the city's infrastructure and the buildings and to build things out of the stone that was sat beneath Paris. But by the 18th century, these quarries had become dangerously unstable, causing collapses in some neighbourhoods, just because the integrity of the structures had been compromised because of how much mass was taken out of it, So a lot of these areas were weakened. At the same time, Paris itself faced a gigantic public health crisis due to its overflowing cemeteries. There was more people dying than they had space to put them. So as you can imagine, the Parisians were scrambling to find a place to put these people. You can't just leave dead people in the hospital or out on the street. So, and one of the most famous cemeteries that was overflowing was the notorious Cemetery of the Innocents. So this is one of the most popular ones that gets mentioned. Now, in 1774 to 1776, officials began closing the unsafe quarries and stabilising the underground network. So like I mentioned just before, the quarries were beginning to be unsafe because of how much limestone and how much rock was removed. And in 74 to 76, they did start closing areas that were weak. Then, if we fast forward just 10 years to 1785, the city decided to transfer human remains from overcrowded cemeteries into the cleared quarry tunnels. So you can see how the catacombs are coming together now. So what they're doing is, there's too many people dying, essentially, not enough space in the cemeteries. They clear out these old quarries, and voila, now there's space to put the dead people. That's essentially what it is. Now these quarries officially became known as the municipal ossuary, and later became known as the catacombs. Between 1780s and 1860, bones were gradually moved into the tunnels, often during the nights, so there was no public interference. Also in the 1800s, Inspector Héricat de Thury reorganised the bones into the decorative structured walls seen today and began to open the site to visitors. So if you look at a picture of the catacombs on Google, you usually see this trademark kind of curved wall that goes round, and all the skulls and stuff are lined up on it. So this kind of decorative work was initiated by Inspector Héricat de Thury. So from that point on, it's pretty self-explanatory. They eventually moved bones and all the remains into the quarries, which became the municipal ossuary, like I mentioned, and then the catacombs, and eventually it is what it is today. Now, if we go on to the kind of structure and size of it, this is where it gets interesting, because I think it's a lot bigger than what people imagine it would be. This is a vast underground network of quarries, So it's located beneath the 14th arrondissement of Paris, which extends under parts of the left bank also. Now, in terms of depth, it's approximately 20 meters or 65 feet underground. That's equivalent to a standard 5-story building. So it's pretty deep underground, you know? It's not something that's just below the surface. It's quite a depth away. The total tunnel network, like I mentioned, it's vast. So it spans over 300 kilometers, about 185 miles. That's 185 miles of underground galleries across Paris. So when people are walking in Paris, I don't think many people realize that below them is essentially a mirror city of tunnels and bones and remains. It's kind of spooky if you think about it like that. Now, saying that, although the actual network is 300 kilometers big, the area that's actually used as the catacombs is only 1.7 kilometers, or just over 1 mile. That's designated to the official ossuary. And the publicly accessible bit is roughly 1.5 kilometers too. So there's a small portion of the catacombs that are closed off, which I will go into a little bit later, where some people have tried to break into them areas, etc. Many of the corridors that are sealed are due to instability. Some lead to kind of strange dead ends, or collapsed chambers, or forgotten quarry zones that are just kind of redundant. And also within some of those areas, there's deep shafts of like small natural pools hidden in the non-public sections. So it's quite dangerous, as you can imagine. There's not very much lighting in there. If you go into a non-publicly accessible bit and you accidentally step into one of these deep shafts or into these natural pools, and all of a sudden you're in water, or all of a sudden you're in a tunnel, it won't be very fun. So yeah, you've also got the old inspection chambers that can be found in the catacombs. These were rooms where the quarry workers ate and prayed, or hid from collapses, and still to this day they contain the carved benches and the alcoves. So, like I mentioned, over the decades, many explorers have created hidden art rooms, murals and sculptures down there, but since the authorities find them occasionally, they have been closed off for safety reasons and whatnot. One of the most famous clandestine groups associated with the catacombs is the Les UX, or the Urban Experiment. So this group is kind of structured into sub-teams, so some focus on exploration, others focus on art, like sculptures and that sort of thing, others on restoration, Untergrundther, or secret events. So in 2004, police discovered a fully equipped underground cinema, bar and restaurant run by them, complete with lighting, seating, even food preparation. Now that is absolutely mind-boggling and kind of cool at the same time. The Untergrundther section of the group claimed to have restored parts of Paris's underground heritage, including crypts and even a historic clock. The membership is very secretive. They go by pseudonyms, communicate cautiously, and avoid any public exposure. But Les UX aren't the only group of people that have tried to do something nefarious in the catacombs. In 2017, there was the wine heist. In a particularly audacious case, thieves used the catacomb tunnels to break into a private wine cellar and stole over 250,000 euros worth of vintage wine. According to police, they likely knew the underground network well enough to plan the break-in carefully, suggesting prior exploration. This shows the catacombs can be used for serious criminal activity, not just exploration. And if you're a Paris native or you know the underground plans well, this is where people get creative and they can find back doors and entries into certain places, or that back onto certain places. And something like this in 2017, so this is not a thing of the past, this is only in the last decade. It's absolutely mind-blowing. The other thing that people love to do in the catacombs, for whatever reason, is something known as the cataphile parties. So the cataphiles have held secret parties, raves, film screenings, and even art installations deep underground. Some do this with care and respect, others have been criticised for leaving damage, graffiti, or even trashing the place. The thing is, these gatherings are risky. You know, the passages are narrow, the ceilings are low, there's dampness, potential cave-ins, hypothermia, and also getting lost is actually a real danger. That place is absolutely puzzling. So many people have been lost there, and people have died being lost there. So that is also a big risk for these parties. Although they sound fun, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I wouldn't go to one, but I would be very cautious. You might be thinking, who polices this then? Do the normal police just go down in these catacombs and get lost themselves, or what happens? So essentially there's a special part of the police force called the cataflics. Now, they're a special underground policing force who patrol the disused quarries and tunnels. Their job is to catch trespassers, deter vandalism, and prevent dangerous or criminal activity. Fines, they give out fines for being caught, and these can range from anything between €60 and €500 or even more, just depends on the situation. And it's kind of, they've got a lot of discretion in that aspect. So these are the guys that police this sort of stuff, and I think overall they probably do a good job, but clearly they haven't done that good of a job because there's people throwing parties and shit. So, yeah. But the catacombs for people are more than just a tunnel. They represent a hidden city below, a place for freedom, art, adventure, escape from the surface world, as some people call it. Some cataphiles describe a social scene, meeting other people, sharing light sources and gear planning, exploration, or even creative projects, and they meet people and kind of build a community down there, I suppose. Over time, some cataphiles have become quite experienced, and they're known as the veterans, while many newcomers now enter due to obviously the online information and the kind of craze about it. But there is tension. The cataphiles sometimes resent the cataflics, and not all visitors down there are welcomed equally. You can imagine, so these people are trying to explore, have fun, and then obviously you've got the patrolling officers. So like anything, there's a bit of tension there, and that will never go away. So I think that's enough of the actual structure and size and that sort of thing, the details of the physical aspect of the catacombs. I think you get the gist. It's a big place, dark, narrow, there's bones everywhere. People try and explore stuff down there. People try and police it down there. You get the gist. But as you can imagine, and what enticed me into this topic, was just how creepy it is. You're walking in a place where there's human remains. So I always wondered, there's got to be some ghost stories or some sort of paranormal activity or reports. Surely this seems like one of the most haunted places ever. There's skulls on the wall, for God's sake. So I did a little deep dive and to see what I could find. So I've picked the 3 kind of most popular or the best ones I could find, and I'm going to go through them now. So let's go to the first one. This is the lost footage legend of the 1990s, often called the Catacombs tape. This is one of the most circulated modern myths. The story says a group of cataphiles exploring an off-limits section in the early 1990s found a handheld video camera half buried in dust and rubble. According to people who claim to have seen it, the video shows a man alone filming himself as he explores, and he shows increasing signs of confusion and disorientation as he ventures deeper and deeper. There's strange markings on the walls and tunnels that seem unfamiliar even to experienced explorers. His breathing becomes panicked as he realizes he no longer knows his way out. The camera then eventually is dropped, continuing to record, however, as his footsteps fade into darkness. Now, the identity of the man is never revealed in the legend. The tale claims he disappeared, but there is no record of an actual missing person linked to the footage. So that's up for debate. Even though it's widely considered a hoax or an urban legend of sorts, the story did become iconic and helped inspire later found footage, horror films and shows. So I guess, it's a net positive, and it creates a nice mystique around the place. I don't know how authentic it is because there's not really any corroborating evidence that I can find, but it's nice to kind of get into that spooky vibe, I suppose. Okay, so number 2. This is the Midnight Voices legend. This is a classic folklore theme among the catacomb explorers. So cataphiles have long claimed that in the deepest, darkest, most isolated corridors, you can occasionally hear whispering in languages you can't identify, soft footsteps on gravel when no one else is around, the faint echo of distant laughter or murmuring, and sudden breaths of cold air, as if someone walked past. Now, why does this feel paranormal? The tunnel's acoustics amplify and distort sound in unpredictable ways. A noise that is made even dozens or hundreds of meters away can seem close because of the echoes, or it can bounce off the walls and can feel like it's coming from behind you when maybe it's in front of you. Some storytellers say the voices belong to the millions of souls that were buried there, and others claim that they try to lure explorers deeper, especially when heard near branching passages. Now, the scientific explanation, or the more realistic explanation, is that these effects can maybe come from dripping water, air pressure changes, resonance in narrow stone corridors, or even distant explorers moving through intersecting tunnels. But the eerie setting makes the ordinary sound feel supernatural. Now, that's the standard explanations. Me? I don't do standard. In a place like that, right, where there's millions of bones, there's no way that these sounds are normal. I don't believe it. This place is so creepy. It's sinister. I believe that there is something supernatural down there. There has to be. There's so much energy in that place. There's so much death, destruction, despair in that place. I feel comfortable in saying quite confidently that there will be some spirits down there. So for me, I think that's correct. I think the legend is true. Okay, so the last one I'm going to go through today is the ghost of Philibert Aspert. This is the most famous ghost story tied to the catacombs. So, Philibert was a doorkeeper at the Val de Grace Hospital during the French Revolution. In 1793, he entered the catacombs carrying only a lantern. The exact reason is debated. Some say he was searching for a secret cellar of liquor stored below the hospital, and others think he simply got curious and wandered too far. The tunnels were almost completely unmarked at the time. It was a true labyrinth. Now, Philibert likely became disoriented and unable to retrace his steps, which is very understandable. And now, with only a small lantern and no food or water, he eventually succumbed to exhaustion or even just the darkness. Now, his body and remains were found 11 years later by quarry workers. He was heartbreakingly close to an exit. He didn't know it, but he was, and that's the issue with the catacombs, is like, there could be exits everywhere, but you just wouldn't know, unless you're very experienced in a place like this, you just wouldn't know. It's not a place where you can go for the first time and kind of get the gist of it. This is a place that needs to be studied. This needs years of experience, so he was painstakingly close to an exit, and he died. He was meters away, and his grave marker still stands underground, making him one of the only official buried individuals in the catacomb. The law says that his spirit wanders with a lantern, appearing as a faint, moving light deep in the tunnels, or a shadowy figure in workers' clothing, or even a guide who either tries to help lost explorers or leads them further in. So I did try and find some official authenticated sightings online, but I couldn't actually find anything. I did find, obviously, some anecdotes, which, to me, the anecdotes are fine. Like, I'll read them, and sometimes they can be true, sometimes they can't be, and that's the nature of anecdotes. You just don't know. But with the grave actually being there, I think that does the story a favour, because his grave is actually in the catacombs. So it's like, why is the grave there then? So it does bolster the feel of the story anyway. It makes you feel like it's authentic. And you know what? That's not hard to believe, He was walking, he got lost, he died. It's not hard to believe. Now, the fact that he comes back, if you don't believe in spirits, which at this point I don't know how you can't, because I think it's pretty obvious there's a different realm, or there's things that we don't understand, and there's energy differences, or whatever you want to call it, or whatever you think it is, if it's from a different dimension or a different realm, or demons or spirits or ghosts or jinn or whatever. There's something out there. And to kind of write these off just because they're anecdotes, I don't think that's fair. So for me, I take them at face value, and so that is the ghost of Philibert. So guys, that was the 3 stories that I wanted to go through today. This episode has been quite interesting, and if you look up some footage online, watch that Sam and Cody episode when they go to explore the catacombs. That's a really good watch, and that's what, obviously, like I mentioned at the start, that's what kind of inspired me to look into it. It's just extraordinary what a place like that can exist underneath Paris, and not many people actually know about it, you know. Beneath Paris lies an extraordinary network of tunnels and chambers created from centuries-old quarries and transformed into an ossuary holding millions of human remains. It's a place where history, architecture, and human morality converge, and where much remains unexplored and largely unknown. Despite centuries of study, large sections of the catacombs remain inaccessible or even unmapped, and stories from explorers suggest that there are still more mysteries to uncover. The site reminds us not only of the practical solutions of the past, but also the limits of our knowledge and the spaces where history and human curiosity intersect. Walking above ground, we rarely consider what lies beneath us. The catacombs stand as a quiet but profound testament to the layers of the city and to the questions that remain hidden in the shadows below. Thank you guys for listening. As always, leave a comment. If you want to get in touch with me, email me. The email's in the notes below, or just leave a comment. And I'll be happy to get back to you. Whether you want to dispute something, I've got something wrong, or you just want to discuss something further, or show me some evidence for something, I'll be happy to discuss all of those things. And I'll be back again in 2 weeks with a new episode. If you have any episodes that you would like me to do a deep dive on, feel free to let me know. And that's it. So, till next time. Peace.